Hi, I'm Bart Barber with you again. Let's talk about the Great Commission, and we're going to talk about the fact that Jesus has commanded us to be baptizing. Now, I've taken so long doing this that it's been a long time since I did the beginning of this series, where we talked about the syntax of the Great Commission and the fact that all of the participles connected with the main verb make this whole commandment one command. It's not several separate commands. It's one command that all hangs in together. And baptizing is a part of that. The word for baptizing means to immerse in water. It's a verb baptizo, and it's a daughter word that is derived from a root word, and that word is the Greek verb bapto. And it's interesting to look at what bapto means. It means to dip in water, but it's used in ways beyond that. It's used to speak about things that sink, which makes sense because if you've got a ship out at sea and it sinks, it winds up being dipped, being immersed into the water, never to come out again. And the Greeks came to use this word metaphorically, much in the same way that you and I use the word sink metaphorically. If your favorite baseball team, it's the ninth inning, and they're down 23-1 and there are 2 outs, then you might look to the person in the seat next to you and say, boy, they're sunk now. And what you mean by that is not that, you're using it metaphorically. You mean that there's no hope. Once a ship sinks, generally, unless it's a submarine, there's no hope for it. All is lost. It's a completely despondent situation. And so, even though baptisms in our church, baptisms in Christian tradition are a celebration, there's something that we get happy and get excited about, there's also a dark side to baptism. And it arises not only out of the meaning of the word, but it arises out of places like Romans chapter 6, where baptism is connected with burial and death. And we're reminded with all of these gruesome images that whenever we're baptized, we're buried with Christ. Now, we like to think about the being raised to walk in newness of life, and certainly that's part of baptism. But being buried together with Christ is part of baptism as well. And I think this is one of the reasons why baptism is such an important part of the Great Commission. And if we want to fulfill the Great Commission, we need to be immersing believers who have been born again. When we are buried together with Christ, we are in effect declaring that all of my life prior to being born again, from this point forward, there's something new. But if you take the moment when I'm born again, all of my life before that, prior to being born again, is something that I am repudiating. And I'm declaring that it was a hopeless project, that it was a hopeless proposition. I'm declaring that it's a vessel that has been sunk, and it's something that has been buried in Christ. And so baptism emphasizes the break with the past. It emphasizes the decisive nature of conversion. That whether my past is that I grew up as a Southern Baptist from the cradle roll or whatever else who came to church but was sinful and lost, trying to save myself, or whether I'm saying that past is a past of being a pagan or an atheist or a drug addict or a suburban housewife or a Muslim or a Buddhist or whatever it is that it's in my past, whenever I come to Christ, I must repudiate it. I must set it aside and call it all to be dung, all to be naught, all to be worthless. And that my life begins at the point when I am born again. And I bury all of that and say that the criminal that I was has been executed and has been buried and has been done away with. And now a brand new life begins. Baptism is very important to call people to decisive conversion. And so it helps us. You know what it does? Baptism, when Christ commands us to baptize, it's one thing that Jesus uses so that when I am tempted to sell a cheap, easy gospel to people, Baptism reminds them and reminds me that that's not the Great Commission. And so if I'm not immersing believers, I am not fulfilling the Great Commission. And anybody that I partner with who's not immersing believers is not a Great Commission partner. They're not a Great Commission Christian unless you are an immersing Christian who baptizes believers. And you know what? This is going to raise up denominational squabble, and that's not something I delight in. But let me say also, I'm not just going after other people and patting Southern Baptists on the back or other kinds of Baptists on the back. If I go as a Southern Baptist somewhere and I preach some kind of crusade and I see lots of people come make decisions and profess that they've been born again, but I do nothing to get them in connection with a local church and to see that they're immersed, I'm not doing the work of the Great Commission. I'm not fulfilling the Great Commission. If I go stand on a street corner and give my testimony and people pass by and I see them pray and then I wave and bid them farewell and they go on their way and I'm not seeing them in a local church, seeing them immersed after their profession of faith, I'm not fulfilling the Great Commission. If I go door to door in a major city and hit every household and see people weep and pray and profess faith in Christ, but I do not see that they are immersed, I am not fulfilling the Great Commission. I am not being a Great Commission Christian. Our job, our commandment from Christ, is that as we make disciples, we call those disciples to set aside their old life and to be buried in a watery grave, symbolizing that in their coming to Christ, there is a brand new start and a rejection of all that went before. They instinctively know this in many of the places where it is dangerous to become a Christian. Baptism is the hurdle. Baptism is the difficult decision for them to make because they know that that watery grave can lead to an earthen one. And it takes courage and it takes determination for them to make the decision to follow Christ in baptism. Thank you. I'm Bart Barber, and it's been fun to talk with you about the Great Commission. Have a great day. Tell somebody about Jesus.